Hello, this is Gio. Hey, look what I have here. I have two Nintendo Game Boy Colors from the late 1990s. So I did recently pick these two up and they actually both still work. The red one actually works a little bit better than the atomic purple one, which you see here. This one pretty much doesn't really have many issues at all, but the atomic purple one, the sound doesn't really work in the speaker. When you plug in some headphones, it does, you can hear the sound. And although most of the time it does work, sometimes it's not that bright and sometimes the screen kind of screws up. So it's not that consistent. And also turning around, you can see it's missing a back battery cover. And when you zoom in here, you do see signs of battery corrosion on these terminals. So hopefully this didn't extend into the electronics. They're just isolated in the terminals, but we will see. And so that's what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be kind of working on these two Game Boy Colors, trying to make them work a little bit better, especially the atomic purple here. See if I can get the speaker working and clean off this corrosion. And since I'm going to be opening up both these and cleaning them out, I might as well do a recap on both of these. There's 3 capacitors on each of these that typically go bad, and so I might as well just go ahead and change those out. So I did say both of these games work. Let's see, I have Monsters Inc. here, which is a Game Boy Color game. So let's just go ahead and power this up and show you what's going on here. And you can see that this one seems to power up fine. Turn up the volume. And that's pretty much as loud as the speaker goes, but the speaker, you can turn the volume up and down. And you can definitely see the color. So this one works pretty well. It sometimes glitches, but it works pretty much the way it's supposed to. But so for the atomic purple one, I probably shouldn't boot this up with corroded terminals, but might as well. And so we do have the volume up all the way, the batteries aren't in, and we turn it on. And as you can see, well, it is playing, but it's, okay, there you go. You can see the screen right there, but you can't hear any sound. As you can see right here, this is a sound portion, and you just don't hear anything. You can see color, there, but it's not as bright as the other one when you look straight at it. You have to look at it generally at more of an angle, and so the screen is diminished, although it still works. So let's go ahead and start on this atomic purple one. So just to open her up, which I do want to do to clean everything out, there are 6 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These 2 are in the battery compartment. It's kind of sticky on the outside. I think somebody put tape to maybe hold in the batteries, but you do need Phillips screw, won't do the trick. What you need, if you can see here, this is like a tri-bit. So there's 3 little teeth on this thing. So this is a specialty screwdriver that you can just pick up online, but these are common for some games. But for the Nintendo Game Boy Color, you do need a tri-bit screw. So let's go ahead and remove these screws. And there we go. So 6 screws. Okay, and then just carefully take the back off. And it just removes just like that. Okay, and so the board is held together by these 3 screws, 1, 2, 3. And then by our little ribbon cable up on top there. And so what I normally like to do is I like to release the ribbon cable first, zoom in, and there's these 2 little tab holders here. And you can either take with your nail, or probably a nail is better. You can just pop those up like that, just straight up. And that will loosen that cable. And then just go ahead and remove these 3 screws. And the board should just come straight out like this. The speaker's a little loose right here, so be careful with the speaker. And then since you've already unfasten the ribbon cable, just with your fingers, just gently pull it out just like that. Okay, so let's see what we have here. So definitely these terminals, it looks like this one right here is pretty corroded. The other one doesn't look that bad. Flipping it over at the soldering, it does not look like there's any corrosion on that side, so that's good. So, so we have that, and it looks like, but it does look like there's some corrosion that extends here. So I think now I could probably clean this off with a toothbrush and some white vinegar. So the white vinegar is kind of a acid, and the corrosion on the batteries is actually basic. So by cleaning it off with a toothbrush and white vinegar, you can kind of like kind of neutralize the battery corrosion, and then kind of clean it off, and that will help prevent future corrosion. But in this case, I do have some replacement terminals, and I definitely think I will need to replace this one. So I'll desolder here to replace that. Also on the case itself, these have some corrosion too. This is more easier. I could just slip this off and replace these terminals. So I think I'll do that rather than keep bad terminals. But before I do that, I'm going to replace these capacitors. So we have 100 microfarad capacitor here. I believe that is a 6 volt. And then 100 microfarad capacitor here, which is 4, and then a 22 microfarad capacitor here, which is I think 16 volt there. These are the sound capacitors here. So hopefully by replacing these, I might actually get sound on the speaker. And then here's the power. There's smaller capacitors, ceramic capacitors, but I don't need to replace those. It's these electrolytic capacitors that tend to go bad. They tend to only last 20 to 30 years. So we're getting to the end of their life anyway. So removing them can prevent board damage in the future. Okay, so these are surface mount capacitors. They don't go all the way through. So there's solder points here and here on each end. The dark little blob here is the negative end. This is the positive end. So they are polarized, so you have to replace them with the correct polarization. And I did get replacement capacitors from Console 5. That's console5.com. They have some good capacitor kits for different consoles, and so I just got a bunch of replacement caps, and I'm going to be using those. But first, let's get these capacitors off the board. Okay, so the easiest way to get these off, now I did tell you that there's a solder point on this side, there's a solder point on the other side. These are labeled plus negative, and you could definitely tell with the black stripe here, that's the negative side. I would not recommend to just desolder here and here with your soldering iron, because that could cause damage to nearby components. It will also melt this plastic. It's just a mess. So first, the easiest way to deal with this is take let's say some little snips. These are just some flush snips, and just cut off the top of the cap. You see this little line right here, if you can see that. This little line right at the bottom. You could just kind of cut right above the plastic right there and snip it off. And now there is an orientation I want you to do this. So again, look at the solder points here, and you want to cut with those solder points. You don't want to do it the other way, because that will squeeze those legs together, and you could actually cause some damage to the board. So again, let's orient this so I can get to it, and I'm just going to make sure we get in there just like that. I'm in line with those two legs there, and then I'm just gonna cut the whole thing off. Just like that. And now you could pretty much take the rest of it off, and then you can remove the plastic. Let's see if I can get some little pliers here. You can take the bottom plastic off like that, and all you're left with is the exposed legs of the capacitor, which you could just easily desolder off. So I'm just going to add a little flux here just to make it a little easier for this to work. I'm going to add some solder. That will just help. You got to add solder to remove solder, so let's go ahead and do that. It just kind of primes the old legs, the old solder, and it'll just make your job a whole lot easier. Now, hopefully, I could just lift up these legs, and it'll come off with the soldering iron. Just like that. And then I have just some desoldering wick here, so I can just use that to sop up the old solder. Like that. And then you just want to get some isopropyl alcohol on a Q-tip and kind of clean the area. Actually, I'm going to clean this entire area. It looks a little messy here. And then you just want to examine these pads and make sure that there's no damage. So hopefully you didn't pull up any of these pads. So that's the reason why we're really careful removing those capacitors. And it looks like these are still in good shape. If they're not, then you might have to do some additional work, which is beyond the scope of this video. But these pads look good for the new capacitor. Okay, so here's the new capacitor. And as you can see, it has the negative end here, so I'm going to be applying it with the negative end on this side here. And you can see the little legs right there. And so there's no real good tab that you can solder onto. So we're going to be applying solder to these pads first. And so first, I'm just going to put some flux on. Flux is your friend. It'll always make the job go easier. And I'm going to apply solder to each one of these pads. So with the solder applied, I'm just going to put down my new capacitor, generally where it's supposed to be. And then I'm going to just, hopefully my fat finger won't get in the way, and kind of hold it. And I'm just going to heat up the solder on this one side. Here, let's show you. And it should just fall down in place. Just like that. Seems to be holding. And then I'm going to reverse it and do the other side. And then just clean up with a little more isopropyl alcohol. And then you should be good. And so we'll do that to the other two caps. Okay, so with those two caps replaced, let's go ahead and remove this one terminal. Okay, so here we are at the back of the board. This is where the terminal is, I believe. Yes, it is. Okay, I'm gonna see if I could use a iron sucker, but I'm gonna see if I could get most of this solder out of here with just some wick. Here, let me first apply some flux. A little new solder. A whole bunch of solder there. Get the wick going. I'll take my little snips and at least snip them down. And there we go, it dropped off. Okay, so this is the old one, this is the new shiny one, and so we'll go ahead and replace that. So we'll hold them in place. I'm just going to crimp them a little bit inward, just so it holds. Add some flux, and then apply a generous amount of solder. Up. Make sure it's straight. That should work. Okay, so for the terminals in the case itself, they're held together by this metal, this little tab in there that's actually accessible on the other side. I'm not sure if you could see this, but right in there, if you put in, let's say, a little tiny screwdriver like this, kind of poke it in. Let's see if I can let you see this. And I should have depressed it, and now it should be easily removed, just like that. It's just a little tab. And of course, before I replace that, I'm just going to clean this whole thing off really good, including all this tape residue that was in there. Just clean up this whole case really well. Okay, so looking at the old terminal and the new replacement, they are a little bit different design. I'm not sure if they changed their design or not, but let's see if this actually fits in. It does look like it has a couple of pinch points to kind of secure itself into the case. So the old one, let's see, the old one was like this, I believe. Let's double check. Yes, the old one was like this, so the new one would be like this too. So as long as it snaps in there, we should be good. And it looks like it fit okay. So that worked. Okay, so off camera, I did put everything back together loosely just to test the batteries and the capacitors. And yes, indeed, everything seems to work. However, I still do not have sound. So that either means I screwed up these capacitors, which is probably not the case. But looking at the speaker, again, the headphone jacks work. Looking at this speaker, you can see there's a lot of discoloration, and it's almost like so there's a wire that comes in here and coils through, and this looks all darkened, so it looks like a blown speaker. So I'm going to have to order a new speaker and replace that before I can actually get some sound. Okay, so fast forward a week and another quick order from Console 5, and I ordered a new speaker, as you see here. Now this is a 8 ohm 1 watt speaker. I believe maybe the original speaker is maybe a 1/4 of a watt or a 1/2 a watt. Now Console 5 does have 1/2 a watt speakers, but I figured it probably doesn't matter that much. I've seen 1 watters put into these things, so hopefully it won't matter. But so I did get the 1 watt. As you can see, the speaker is right there. It sort of sits in just like this, and in the case it will just land right in this little spot right here. And if I drop this speaker in, you'll notice it sort of wiggles around, and so that's something you have to be aware of. The original speaker actually came in a little plastic case, as you can see here, and the replacement ones do not. And so you could get a little bit of wiggle in the cases itself, and you can maybe secure them with some tape or another way to make them not rattle around. However, Console 5 actually manufactures a little speaker holder, as you can see here. Now this one's the kind of clear one. They also come in black, but these are designed to actually fit into the Game Boy Color cases, and as you can see here, it has 2 little tabs right there in the case. And if you can see the original
speaker, you can see there's two little tabs, one right there and one right there. Now the replacement holder also has that same shape. If I can orient it in the right way, you can see they're kind of in the same shape. So these are actually manufactured to fit nicely in these little holders like that and not wiggle around. So when you insert the speaker, and you have to insert it a certain way, here's the little solder points right there, and those go right there. So you want to insert them the proper orientation like that. They kind of clip in there, and it actually holds really well. And so when you insert the speaker in here, it won't wiggle around as much, and it'll be much more secure. So that's kind of a really cool feature that Console 5 sells. So to replace the speaker, it's pretty simple. It's just desoldering 2 points. There's 2 wires that come from the board to the original speaker. There's a solder point there and a solder point there, and you're just desoldering these wires and resoldering them to these points right here, 1, 2. And that should do her. So let's go ahead and get this little cap on here. It actually has to fit underneath here, I think. Like that. Just like that. It rotates in like this. Kind of get the wires out of the way. I think it'll sit in pretty much like that. And so this, let's put this thing together and see if this new speaker actually works. Cross your fingers. And we're going to take the case. Let's go ahead and put back the ribbon cable here really carefully. Like that. Shut these little tabs. Make sure the ribbon cable's in nicely. Shut the tabs. And let's just sit this thing in. Let's see how this fits in here. Let's see. This speaker should just fit like that. I'm not going to put any screws in for now. I'm just going to put the top cover just loosely in here. Make sure that the little on-off switch is in the proper place there. Make sure that there's some holes you got to line up at. Good, good. Okay, there we go. Now it fits in nice. Make sure it fits nicely. Good. We'll go ahead and fit in some batteries. Put in our game. Again, no screws, so hold it tight. And let's see if it actually has sound. All the way up. Let's turn her on. There you go, it has sound. Very nice, very nice. Okay, so we do have sound. It looks like everything works. I'm checking to make sure everything's aligned properly here before I put in the 3 screws. And so let's go ahead and put back our 3 screws that held everything together here. There's one right there. Okay, so I think for this rehabilitation, I think we're pretty much done. For your Game Boy Color, you may actually want to also test out, of course, your power plug here, your headphone jack, the external plug, on-off switch, volume. You know, these things may need to be well cleaned and or replaced. I know console 5, you can get, you know, like the power jack, etc., the headphone jack that you can purchase and resolder in. I don't need to do that with here. You just want to make sure everything is clean before you button it up. Now, before I close this up, I'm just going to take some electrical contact cleaner. As you can see here, this is just WD-40 brand. I'm going to just kind of shoot in and use these in some of these plugs, like the power plug right here. I'm just going to squirt this in a little bit. And I don't have a power plug on me, but hopefully that cleans it off a little bit. Headphone jack. I'm just going to squirt a little bit in. And then use my headphone jack in and out a little bit, just so it's nice and clean. Like that. The volume, you can just kind of squirt right underneath here. This is fast drying and it doesn't hurt the electronics. So, and then you just want to wiggle it as much as back and forth just to get any dirt or grime out of there. And that if you have any problems with your volume, this could possibly solve your issue. I think I'll just squirt in a little bit of this there, kind of clean that off. And of course your on-off switch, if you're having any problems with your on-off switches, that cleaning it with contact cleaner commonly works. So just apply it and go back and forth a few times. And that commonly solves a lot of problems just using contact cleaner. So we got that all done. Make sure that your ribbon cable is properly secured. It is. And then we'll just go ahead and replace the back case. Make sure everything's lined up well. Closes nicely. And start putting back your tri-wing screws. Okay, so we got the case back together. It seems to be fitting very well. Now, last but not least, remember we had lost the old battery compartment cover. Fortunately, you can still get replacement battery covers for these old Game Boys. And you can either go online and see if you can find an original used cover, but people are still manufacturing duplicate battery covers, and you can see right here I was able to get one with the atomic purple color, and you can still buy them in multi different colors. This one actually came with an original, not an original, but a duplicate sticker that you would see on the original Game Boys. Some people say if you get duplicates you shouldn't try to duplicate the stickers, but I think they look kind of cool. So let's go ahead and put some batteries in here and see how this fits. This fits very well, and you can see it fits nicely and the color matches really well. We'll go ahead and stick in a game. Let's just go ahead and let's do Pokemon this time. It's not a color game, but we'll just go ahead and turn that on, and there you have it. So there you go. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button at the bottom of the screen and even consider subscribing to my channel. I have many more videos to come. Bye-bye.